Ever since his debut in the 90s, one of the most popular and consistent directors to come out of America has been Quentin Tarantino. Known for his wild, eccentric, and violent movies written primarily by himself, Tarantino's unique style of filmmaking has been enjoyed by millions across the globe. While Pulp Fiction and Inglorious Basterds are widely popular and acclaimed by practically everyone, how does the rest of his filmography hold up? Yo, what's good, guys? I'm Eric, and welcome to my new series, Filmmaker Filmography. I'll be taking a look at the complete filmography of numerous different movie directors and dissecting them, while giving my personal thoughts and opinions on them. The first person I'll be taking a look at today is Quentin Tarantino. With that said, let's dive in. Quentin Tarantino was born Quentin Jerome Tarantino on March 27th, 1963, in Knoxville, Tennessee. You know who else is from Knoxville? Anyways, ever since he was a little kid, Tarantino had a love for movies, seeing movies like Carnal Knowledge and Deliverance. When he was just 14 years old, Tarantino wrote his very first screenplay called Captain Peach Fuzz and the Anchovy Bandit, which was based on the movie Smokey and the Bandit. A year later at 15, his mom caught him shoplifting Elmore Leonard's novel The Switch. His love for the author is important for later. At his community theater, he would participate in some plays, but it wasn't until the 80s when his filmmaking career began to form. After working a variety of jobs after dropping out of high school, in 1986 Tarantino found a job as a clerk at a video store in Manhattan Beach called Video Archives, where he met and befriended future collaborator Roger Avery. The two would work together as production assistants for a Dolph Lundgren exercise video. During that time, a short film titled My Best Friend's Wedding was left incomplete, and he appeared as an Elvis impersonator on an episode of The Golden Girls, the residuals from that episode being used for his future feature film debut. Eventually, he met up incoming producer Lawrence Bender in 1990 at a friend's barbecue, who had co-written and produced the slasher Intruder from the previous year, where Tarantino discussed an idea of a heist film that focused heavily on dialogue. Bender persuaded Tarantino to pursue this idea and put it on paper. 3.5 weeks later, it was complete. Bender gave the script to his acting teacher, who gave it to Harvey Keitel, best known for his works with Martin Scorsese on films like Mean Streets and Taxi Driver, who agreed to co-produce and help find funding for the project. $1.5 million were raised, and after casting was done, Reservoir Dogs was born. Reservoir Dogs is the 1992 debut crime movie written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. The film follows a group of criminals after a heist goes terribly wrong. This film is the foundation for every future Tarantino project, known for its heavy, relatable dialogue, lots of violence and profanity, non-linear structure, and eccentric characters. In its 99-minute run, the film explores its main characters whose names we barely ever learn, just by their color and nickname. Harvey Keitel also acts in the film, playing the central character of Mr. White, with there also being Mr. Orange, Mr. Pink, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Blue, and of course, Mr. Brown, played by Tarantino. Also along for the ride are crime lord Joe Cabot and his son, Nice Guy Eddie, guiding the men along the way. The most interesting thing about the film is that we actually never see the heist, only the before and after the events. We get to know little things about the men before the heist, such as how Mr. Pink never tips, but their personality is shown more and more after the heist. Mr. Blue and Brown are killed, so we watch the other 6 men fight amongst each other in order to get the diamonds as the police are in pursuit. Everything in the movie is also pretty good. Not perfect, but very well done for a very first film. Every actor gives their best and gives very good performances, especially the breakthrough performances of Steve Buscemi, Tim Roth, and Michael Madsen. Although a little formulaic at times, Tarantino's screenplay, especially the dialogue, marked this standout from other crime movies at the time. And although there had been other heist movies before this, such as Dog Day Afternoon, The Sting, and the original Ocean's 11, this film brought in a whole new wave of influential and successful heist movies at the time, like Heat and Inside Man. And for a film at the beginning of the 90s indie boom, this movie feels like a big Hollywood production, with really great cinematography and production. Controversial at the time, especially because of the infamous Mr. Blonde torturing the cop scene. But compared to stuff nowadays, Reservoir Dogs still holds up and is a very good 90s crime flick. But although this film does make things right, I just don't connect with this film the way others do. It's maybe a hot take, and don't get me wrong, I think the film's great, but future Tarantino films would do practically everything in this film so much better. Everything is well done, but doesn't have the distinction and humanity of future films. If you like this, or if this is your favorite Tarantino film, that's okay. We all prefer different things. But future films, especially when it comes to screenplays and characters, would do things so much better. Reservoir Dogs received critical acclaim after its premiere at Sundance, led to major studios flocking to get a screenplay or story from the talented filmmaker. Quentin Tarantino did a bunch of uncredited rewrites for a bunch of 90s films, those being the neo-noir thriller Past Midnight, the Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman submarine thriller Crimson Tide, Michael Bay's second movie The Rock, and of course, one of the very few movies to receive a 0% Rotten Tomatoes, It's Pad. When it comes to Quentin Tarantino's writing, directed by someone other than himself, there are three films that come to mind, and I'll briefly discuss them as they are very important to understanding who Tarantino is not only as a filmmaker, but as a person as well. The first is True Romance, released a year after Reservoir Dogs and directed by Crimson Tide and Top Gun director Tony Scott. This story feels like Tarantino's most personal film, even compared to every other film he directed, and that's what makes it so good. Protagonist Clarence Worley, played by Christian Slater, feels like Tarantino's most personal character, sharing many similarities to him such as his love for movies and Elvis, but we also see his loneliness as well, until he meets Alabama. Tony Scott does a brilliant job of adapting Tarantino's screenplay, full of the things we all expect from the writer. All of the characters feel realistic and like people we could meet in real life, even the eccentric ones, played by Gary Oldman and Christopher Walken. The result is one of the best and most underappreciated crime movies of the 90s, and probably Scott's best movie. If you love any of the Tarantino's work, you'll certainly love this one as well. The second screenplay was From Dusk Till Dawn, released in 1996 between Pulp Fiction and Jackie Brown, based on a story by Robert Kurtzman, and directed by close friend and collaborator Robert Rodriguez. The story follows two criminal brothers who take a family hostage across Mexico, until things go south. This movie was pretty weird. I've never seen a movie change genres so swiftly, going from a crime movie in the first half to a horror one in the second. Crime is Tarantino's home, so it's interesting to see him tackle horror, even though it may not be the best. I'm not a fan of Robert Rodriguez as a director, so he does a solid job with this film, even with Tarantino's acting. The best part of this film is probably George Clooney. This was his first big lead role and helped him solidify as an A-list actor in Hollywood, and his presence through the film is well appreciated in this mess. Overall, a pretty mixed bag. Some will like it, some won't. It's up to you to decide. And the third and final film is Natural Born Killers. Released the same year as Pulp Fiction and directed by renowned director Oliver Stone, the movie follows two lovers played by Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis, who go on a killing spree across America, all as the media glorifies them. Infamously, Tarantino disowned the film after Stone and others completely changed the screenplay. The film was controversial and received mixed reviews from critics, but despite that, was a big success and recently is much more praised and beloved. I, however, think this movie is mediocre. I believe Oliver Stone peaked at JFK, and everything afterwards just gets significantly worse. I don't like any of the characters in the film. The Toolies are annoying and kind of generic despite their backstories. Robert Downey Jr. pisses me off with his annoying Australian accent and whining. Tommy Lee Jones is pretty annoying as well, and every other character is one-dimensional or forgettable. I don't know whose fault it is for this, but another thing that I dislike is the cinematography. It changes back and forth consistently, from color to black and white, and distracts from the movie and gives me a headache, along with the constantly moving camera. Many probably like this for this reason, but I don't. While the movie still holds up and the themes still stay true to this day, watching the movie is a slog, and I wouldn't want to rewatch this anytime soon. Now let's get back. Tarantino was also offered projects like Speed and Men in Black, but they weren't for him. Instead, he isolated himself in Amsterdam and the Red Light District with his buddy Roger Avery, and wrote his next feature that would be similar to Reservoir Dogs. When he returned to America, he got Lawrence Bender's help, eventually leading to Tarantino's relationship with Miramax beginning. They got the producers and cast, and later created what's considered not only one of the best movies of the 90s, but of all time. Pulp Fiction is Quentin Tarantino's sophomore 1994 film. Perhaps the most famous film told in non-linear order, it follows three distinct stories connected with one another. The first about criminals Vincent Vega and Jules Winfield. The second one, again about Vega as he deals with his bosses Marcellus Wallace's wife Mia. And the third about aging boxer Butch College as he tries to escape from Wallace after double-crossing him. The most memorable and relatable characters out of any Tarantino film, this masterpiece shows how the good and especially the bad parts of humans through this unique story. First, let's talk about the characters. Vincent, Julius, Butch, Mia, and every small character feels very three-dimensional and like someone you know or encounter everywhere. Although practically everyone is a criminal or troubled individual, Pulp Fiction shows how we can tackle things differently and how anything can happen to us at any time. We learn different things about everyone through these different stories. Wallace is shown as a villainous, ruthless villain from Vincent and Julius's perspective, but we see that he's human too when he and Butch have to escape from the dungeon of the neo-Nazi. Yeah, Pulp Fiction's weird. Cleaners, eccentric bank robbers, and Vietnam War veterans are only some of the wild characters spread through this 2.5-hour film, but still don't feel cartoonish or dragged out. Another thing I greatly appreciate about the characters is how they all smoothly interact with one another without being forced. Although they hardly interact, it feels natural for the killer Vincent to hunt and track down the wanted Butch, or Mia Wallace having to be babysat by Vincent as well. Speaking of which, let's talk about the acting. Ving Rhames, Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Bruce Willis, and everyone else give phenomenal performances, but the three standout performances really stand out. After being in a career slump for over a decade, John Travolta gives a vibrant performance as Vincent Vega. Whether it comes to dancing, shooting people, or talk about a Royale with cheese, this performance along with Saturday Night Fever solidifies Travolta as one of our greats, and to never underestimate his abilities, even though he's in some pretty bad movies. Uma Thurman is phenomenal as the crime boss's wife, portraying her struggling with her demons to addictions just like a real addict, as you see her pain throughout the film. And of course, the iconic Samuel L. Jackson as Julius. Jackson's breakthrough performance is his best, showing great emotion even without speaking. Reciting Bible verses in tense situations could turn out to be corny or cringe, but Jackson brilliantly can recite verses and strike fear onto everyone who hears them. All three earned Oscar nominations for their performances, and many argue that the three, especially Jackson, should have won, but losing to Tom Hanks, Martin Landau, and Diane Wiest isn't that bad. Speaking of the Oscars, the only award the film walked away with is arguably one of the best of all time, the original screenplay of the film. Even without the structure, the 6 sections of the film are so unique, well written, and perfectly executed that makes this film flawless. When it comes to non-linearity, the editing is so smooth that it never leaves the audience confused about whose story it is. It makes it easy to follow no matter what. It's important to mention Tarantino wasn't the only person involved with this. Roger Avary contributed a lot to the script and shouldn't be forgotten. His contribution helped this film become the cult classic that it is today. This screenplay is one all featuring aspiring screenwriters study, as Tarantino is one of a kind wordsmith. Even compared to beautiful screenplays from the same decade like Fargo and Good Will Hunting, Pulp Fiction's impact cannot be underestimated. Wait, I actually forgot to mention one tiny flaw of this film. It doesn't hurt it that much, but it sticks out. Tarantino's acting. Tarantino sticks out like a sore thumb in his film, always feeling too pretentious and trying too hard. His scene with Travolta and Jackson when he tried to dispose of the dead body makes it seem like he's never acted before, despite all of his knowledge. Directors like Martin Scorsese and even Woody Allen flow much better in their films compared to Tarantino despite his best efforts. His acting career basically became non-existent after the 90s, thank God. But other than that, Pulp Fiction is one of the greatest achievements in the history of film, still having influences to this very day. It remains one of my all-time favorite films along with many others, and solidified Tarantino as one of the decade directors to watch out for. Pulp Fiction was one of the greatest successes in 90s cinema, winning the Palme d'Or at Cannes, an Oscar, and grossing over $200 million worldwide. $200 million! In the next few years, Tarantino participated in the anthology film 4 Rooms, receiving terrible reviews, and the Robert Rodriguez flicks Desperado and From Dusk Till Dawn. After Pulp Fiction, Tarantino and Avary received the rights to 3 Elmore Leonard novels. Remember him? Rum Punch, Freaky Deaky, and Kill Shot. Tarantino was considering adapting one of the latter two, but after rereading Rum Punch, he fell in love with it and decided to tap it instead. He wrote the screenplay, changing some things along the way, reunited with his boy Bender, and thus his next film was born. Jackie Brown is Quentin Tarantino's third film released in 1997. Though only Tarantino based on previous work, the film adapts Leonard's novel Rum Punch, making a few changes such as Jackie's race and last name. The 90s had a bunch of other Leonard's books turned into movies like Get Shorty and Out of Sight. But out of all of them, Jackie Brown stands out as the best of them all. And Leonard even agreed himself. His novels involve crime, eccentric characters, and wild stories, which Tarantino beautifully adapts to the big screen. Tarantino does a near perfect job of turning this novel into a film fitting to call his own. If you wouldn't notice it was an adaptation, then you wouldn't be crazy to think this is just a follow-up to Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. Now let's talk more about the characters. We all know of Tarantino's love for movies, and he especially loved blaxploitation films. This is where Pam Grier comes in. One of the biggest stars in the genre in the 70s, she had previously auditioned for a role in Pulp Fiction, but Tarantino didn't feel she was right for that role. But now, this role was perfectly suited for her, and she gives the best performance of her entire career. Tarantino always gets the best out of his actors and actresses, and Grier is phenomenal as a flight attendant caught up in criminal activity. Even in her final scene in what I think is Tarantino's best ending, you can feel all the pain and suffering she has endured as she drives away, as she begins a new journey in life. Just as good as Grier in the film is Samuel L. Jackson. The second collab between him and Tarantino, Jackson this time plays the villainous Ordell Robbie. Cold and evil, Robbie is willing to do anything to get his way, outacting even the ever so talented Robert De Niro. And this is probably his second best performance after his last one in Pulp Fiction. Even after being gunned down, you can feel his impact way after the film is over. Tarantino always gets the best out of Jackson, no matter how big or small the role. Grier and Jackson deserved much more recognition than they got. They could have easily swapped out Julie Christie in Afterglow and Greg Kinnear in As Good as It Gets for Oscar nominations for the iconic roles. The rest of the supporting cast gives amazing performances as well, especially Robert Forster. He's most well known for his performances in the Breaking Bad universe, the only actor to appear in all three mediums. We do not count Slipping Jimmy. It's nice to see such a solid performance get the acclaim it got. Chris Tucker is pretty funny for the short role he got, and Michael Caine as ATF agent Ray is good as well. He appears as the same character in Steven Soderbergh's Out of Sight, but it's just confusing talking about the legal agreements surrounding it. The story is pretty well as good. Not as revolutionary as his previous writing, the film feels very similar to Pulp Fiction despite no non-linearity, and the LA setting is really gorgeous as well. All of the characters feel very human, and a couple twists and turns will generally surprise you in the third act. Overall, Jackie Brown's a very fun film and one I would highly recommend if you've never seen it. And honestly, I would probably prefer it over Reservoir Dogs personally. Jackie Brown was a success and well received, despite it not reaching the heights of his previous film. Tarantino didn't do much for the rest of the 90s, getting prepared for his next film at the beginning of the 21st century. This next project would combine tons of his inspirations and be his most ambitious one yet, as one of his best as well. Divided into two parts, the first volume of Kill Bill was released near the end of 2003. The two films, considered one by many, follow a character known as the Bride, played by Uma Thurman, as she goes on a journey of vengeance against the man who was supposed to be her husband Bill and his henchmen after leaving her for dead. Tarantino came up with the character and concept with Uma Thurman while working on Pulp Fiction, and completed the screenplay in New York City in 2000 and 2001. Thurman, now having a baby of her own, Maya Hawke, influenced how Tarantino wrote the character, allowing the story to be fully developed. Volume 1 follows the bride awakening from a coma after 4 years after being shot in the head by Bill, and going to kill the first two members of Bill's Deadly Viper assassination squad, Vernita Green and Oren Ishii. The Kill Bill films are the best example of Tarantino's influence for movies, borrowing many shots and ideas from Japanese films like Lady Snowblood and Battle Royale, the Swedish film Thriller, A Cruel Picture, and westerns like The Searchers. The action and fighting in the first film is Tarantino's best, feeling similar to a samurai movie like Yojimbo, paired well together with Tarantino's signature gore and violence. The main character of the Bride borrows heavy influence from cowboys from classic westerns, especially Clint Eastwood's characters in the Dollars trilogy. Speaking very little, while conveying their emotions flawlessly with their faces. We never see Bill in the first part, but through what we see very little of from the Vipers, we can feel his evil nature all throughout the film, even when not about him. The early parts of the film with the bride in the hospital and fighting Green are pretty good and funny at times. Remember Buck? But where the movie picks up is when the bride goes to Japan. There we see all of Tarantino's Japanese influences right on his sleeve, complete with an anime flashback scene for the deadly Ishi. But by far the best part of the film is the enormous fight scene at the very end, where the bride has to take down dozens upon dozens of Yakuza members for minutes, until she finally has a chance of taking down Ora and Ishi outside in the gorgeous snow. The choreography is impeccable, as the bride slices down every Yakuza member, and after the breathtaking battles, we finally get a quick chance to take a breath before the bride realizes she still has 3 more people to take down, including what was supposed to be her husband, Bill. Quentin Tarantino's most action-packed film also feels like one of his most mature ones, with very few humorous moments at the end, so you can feel the severity of the situation. Kill Bill Volume 1 is absolutely one of Tarantino's best, an excellent film that excels in nearly everything it tries to accomplish. While the story doesn't take focus here, it doesn't matter, as everything else surely makes up for it. I wonder how this story continues next. Shot at the same time as the first, Kill Bill Volume 2 was released nearly half a year later in the spring of 2004. With much more of a story emphasis this time, the story continues as the bride takes down the remainings of the Deadly Viper assassination squad. Bill's brother Bill, the deadly nurse Elle Driver, and finally Bill himself. Volume 2 has much less action than the first, instead focusing on developing the bride as a character, along with Tarantino's kung fu influences as well. The fights with Bud and Driver aren't as good as the 2 main fights from the previous film, instead focusing on the bride's backstory and relationship with Bill also as she prepares to take him down. We also see her training kung fu with her master, played by the legendary kung fu actor Gordon Liu, this time seeing Tarantino's other influences from Asia, this time from China and Hong Kong. The place that Volume 2 really excels at is the ending. After killing all of the rest of the Deadly Vipers with the help of an old pimp, the bride, whose name we now know as Beatrix Kiddo, tracks Bill to his home. When she enters, he's waiting with her child that she thought died, and after putting her to sleep, the two don't start an epic final battle immediately, but just talk with one another for a while. This second part isn't exactly the same as the first, but it is much more emotional and humane. We learn that Bill actually has feelings and emotions, and isn't just a cruel psychopath. And seeing the two walk together, you get to wrap up their loose ends. As the title suggests, the bride eventually does kill Bill, and then takes her child with her and drives away, now finally able to have a sweet life together. Volume 2 serves as a solid follow-up to the first. Although a little predictable and too long at times, I really enjoyed this film and how it focused more on emotional storytelling rather than action, not trying to be the exact same thing as before. Tarantino is really good at developing characters no matter what genre he's working in, and the performances by Uma Thurman and David Carradine as Bill were really superb as well. Although I think Volume 1 is much more superior when it comes to tackling its subject matter, this film is also a pretty good sequel as well. Revenge is always a messy story, I guess. Hey, just wanted to quickly mention to thank you guys for watching so far and to like the video if you're enjoying it. I'm planning to do a whole lot more videos in the future, so consider subscribing if you want to, and give me your feedback and personal opinions in the comment section below if you want to. Anyways, thank you once again, let's get back into the video. Kill Bill Volume 2 received just as much acclaim as the first, and it also did just as well as the box office. After that, Tarantino did a couple directing and acting on TV, but the biggest thing he did was contribute to his buddy Robert Rodriguez's movie Sin City, considered by many to be his finest work along with El Mariachi. After that, the two decided to do something barely ever seen in movies anymore, a double feature, each director directing one film. This resulted in Grindhouse, full of the director's signature techniques and homages to the exploitation genres. Robert Rodriguez directed the action comedy horror film Planet Terror, but this video isn't about him. Instead, we'll talk about his second film, the one directed by the one and only Quentin Tarantino. Death Proof is Quentin Tarantino's 2007 action slasher film. Starring Kurt Russell as stuntman Mike McKay, it follows 3 women who go out to have fun, only to be stalked and followed by the serial killer Mike, who kills women in his car that he considers to be quote-unquote death-proof. This film is Tarantino's least ambitious and one of his shortest. which results in what most, including I, consider his weakest and worst movie. It's not bad by any chance, it's okay, but it doesn't strive to do anything special or unique. A movie that relies too much on tropes to have any substance. The first half hour of the movie is slow and tedious, just side characters that come from Tarantino's worst writing talking amongst each other. Things finally pick up when Kurt Russell appears, however, and it truly becomes a Tarantino film when the stunt driver shows what his car can really do when he begins to start killing the woman. Best parts of the film come in the second half, when Mike begins to chase down the second set of women. The action, driving, and choreography are pretty cool and captivating, but pretty entertaining compared to the rest of the film. The ending feels pretty satisfying too, the three women ending Mike's rampage once and for all. Other than the action and acting, however, as Kurt Russell and the rest of the ladies were great, but all of the actors in a Tarantino movie other than Tarantino usually are, the movie doesn't do much for me personally. The writing and character development are practically non-existent, which I get as these type of movies usually never had that, but doesn't feel much of a Tarantino film either. There's not that much I have to say about this film that I haven't said. It's an okay fun action film. But other than that, it's Tarantino's least ambitious work to date and his worst. Grindhouse as a whole flopped at the box office despite the names attached and receiving positive reviews. After this, Tarantino decided to complete a screenplay he had been working on for over a decade, as he wanted it to be perfect. He nearly abandoned it too after he couldn't find the right actor for the villainous role, until he eventually found a specific actor perfect for the role from Austria. Basing the film off of war movies and films about guys on missions, Tarantino did extensive casting for his next epic, and eventually found his perfect cast and began production in 2008. Tarantino's war film premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in May of 2009, where Tarantino previously won the Palme d'Or for Pulp Fiction, and was released worldwide later in August, and the rest is history. Inglorious Basterds was the result. The 2009 war film follows the titular Bastards, led by Brad Pitt's first lieutenant Aldo Raine, a group of Jewish American soldiers in World War II, who joined forces with a German actress and agent to take down the leaders of the Third Reich, all while being hunted down by the evil killing machine Hans Landa. Although containing Tarantino's signature humor, Bastards is Tarantino's most mature film, as there's little to joke about when it comes to the deadliest war in human history, involving Nazis and the Holocaust. It balances all of its themes and tones so brilliantly, going from funny and violent to dark and serious from scene to scene. The scenes with the Bastards are the usual Tarantino humor, the numerous members trying their best to set up their plan to kill the Nazi leaders in the movie theater, recruiting new members along the way. However, when we focus on Shoshana Dreyfus, whose Jewish family was brutally slaughtered at the beginning of the film, the tone shifts to a much somber tone, similar to practically any other war film. You feel her pain in all her scenes, and similar to Kill Bill, want her to get revenge on the antagonist. Although previous Tarantino films had great casts, Bastards has the best ensemble cast yet. Brad Pitt had previously had a small role in the Tarantino-written film True Romance. This is the first collaboration between the two. Pitt is absolutely hilarious in every scene he's in, and has great chemistry with all of his co-stars, especially with the Bastards. Speaking of them, it's fascinating to see Eli Roth, Michael Fassbender, BJ Novak, and the rest of the actors in this unit are so funny as well, especially in the scene where they attempt to pass as Italian. Tarantino doesn't often work with non-English speaking actors or actresses, so seeing all of these European performers, especially Melanie Laurent as Shoshana, is great to see. But there is one performance I haven't mentioned, so of course I have to talk about it. Christoph Waltz's breakthrough performance as Nazi Hans Landa is simply spectacular. Every scene he's in, Waltz strikes fear into the audience, playing the cold and ruthless Jewish hunter who will stop at nothing to achieve his goals. Tarantino said Waltz was the perfect choice for the role, and if he wouldn't have found him, the film probably wouldn't have been made. Whether it's speaking 4 different languages, interrogating suspects like at the very beginning, or eventually losing and getting a swastika carved into his forehead, Landa always feels like a true villain that could have been encountered in real life. Tarantino said his character is his best written character he ever put on paper, and it's hard to disagree. Although a Nazi, Landa in reality serves himself and his goals, just going through different paths. Even though, as we all know, Germany loses the wall, Landa doesn't. Although losing the battle, beyond the boundaries of the film he succeeds in life, and shows the audiences that even there are evil people around us, not all of them get the punishment they deserve and can walk around the earth with the rest of us like nothing ever happened. Even in previous years when we had Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men and Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, Waltz gave the most compelling supporting performance of the decade, deserving all of the accolades he received. It's nice to see him have a nice career after this film as well, which we'll see in a little bit. Quentin Tarantino, Quentin Tarantino's screenplay is one of his best as well, only behind Pulp Fiction, of course. Tarantino works best when he challenges dozens of ideas, characters, and story beats as well, no matter if they're original or inspired from something else, with the imagery truly bringing the story to life. Like every other war film, the cinematography is Tarantino's best as well, with Robert Richardson showing he's one of the best in the industry. No matter what scene you are in the movie, the production, costumes, and effects, especially when the Nazis are getting slaughtered, is magnificent and shows that something bigger doesn't always make it better. Overall, Inglorious Basterds is another Tarantino masterpiece, his best since Pulp Fiction, and has been top since. The performances and story are superb. This is perhaps the most unique war film ever made, especially ones that take place in World War II. Whether you want something humorous or serious or both, this interesting piece of cinema is something everyone should check out at one point or not in their life. Inglorious Basterds was a worldwide hit both critically and commercially, and was sort of a comeback for Tarantino. It received many awards, especially for Christoph Waltz's performance, and everyone had their eye on Tarantino's next project. In the end, this project was just as big as the last, but in a completely different place and time setting. He had thought of this idea between Death Proof and Bastards, and began casting and production a little after Bastards' release. His next film was released in 2012, and became even more successful critically and commercially than his last. Django Unchained is Quentin Tarantino's 2012 revisionist Western movie starring Jamie Foxx as the titular role of Django. The movie follows Django as a slave, who after being rescued from captivity from a German bounty hunter, teams up with him to release his wife from slavery as well. As we already know, Tarantino loves and takes heavy influence from classic Western movies, so it's fitting that he would eventually make his own. Even the title takes influence from a few westerns, the spaghetti western Django being influenced for the main character's name, with the lead actor of that film also having a cameo in this film. The sprawling epic reunites Tarantino with Waltz, him playing the bounty hunter Dr. King Schultz, as he teams up with Django as the two travel across the South in order to get back to Django's wife Broomhilda. The first half follows the two traveling, killing slave owners, and freeing slaves, in typical Tarantino fashion with a western twist. Not much happens until we finally reach Calvin Candy's plantation where Broomhilda is a slave there. All of their performances are great as expected. But Leonardo DiCaprio in his first Tarantino movie as the racist scheming Candy, and Samuel L. Jackson once again worked with Tarantino, this time as Candy's loyal slave Steven. This part of the film is also where things really pick up, as Django and Schultz slowly work their way to rescue Broomhilda, until a deadly shootout at the end that leaves only Django and Broomhilda alive, as they walk together as Candy's mansion explodes to the ground. Tarantino's Western is very well done as expected, but doesn't contain as much substance as you would expect. Jamie Foxx is great as the lead. He's a very talented actor and plays Django really well. What his standouts are the three supporting performances of Waltz, DiCaprio, and Jackson. It's shocking looking back and seeing Waltz getting all of the acclaim, especially considering it's the weakest of the three performances and weaker than his performance in Inglorious Basterds. But it's not a bad one. Jackson is great as well, and if people would have shifted their attention to giving awards to Jackson instead of Waltz, I feel like he could have won his first Oscar. But the best of these three performances was Leo as Calvin Candy. DiCaprio rarely gets supporting roles. He's usually always the lead in his movies, other than his breakthrough in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but he truly gets to shine in a rare villain role. Similar to Hans Landa, Calvin Candy is a cruel and unpredictable character who only cares for himself, and is willing to kill others to achieve his goals. Although people really love Django Unchained, especially in the Tarantino community, I'm a little more critical of it. At nearly 3 hours, the runtime of this movie is way too long. A lot of sections, especially in the first half, could be cut or trimmed. It's a little messy towards the end as well and drags on for an extra 10 minutes, but that's a little more forgiving. Other than Death Proof, Django has some of the least developed characters out of all Tarantino's movies, especially Django himself. It's surprising that the screenplay is Tarantino's second most celebrated screenplay by awards behind you know which one, considering it's one of his weakest, especially compared to his previous one, The Kill Bills, Jackie Brown, and Reservoir Dogs. But it's whatever at this point. Now, what I really want to talk about, which I've basically ignored up to this point, controversies. Early in his career, Tarantino received controversy for his use of violence and profanity. That mainly down after every release, but one hasn't, which is Tarantino's use of the N-word. Especially in his first three movies, which return in Django, The N-word is heavily used by practically all of the characters in the movies, leading to many calling Tarantino racist and him having no right to say that word. One of his most outspoken critics is legendary director Spike Lee, saying slavery wasn't a that Western like Tarantino portrayed it, and was a much more horrific event. Samuel L. Jackson has defended Tarantino, though, saying he isn't racist and portrays his black characters as usually the smartest and wisest ones in all of his movies. What do I think, though? I think it's weird that Tarantino uses this word so much, especially in certain circumstances where it's not needed. But I don't think Tarantino's racist. He's just really awkward. Django is a really good, well done movie, but one I just don't connect much with other movies as well. I love the Western genre, and it's nice to see a fresh new Western after they downed down after Unforgiven in the early 90s. But it does things so different compared to ones he was influenced by that it just feels like something else entirely. Again, if you love this film, that's okay. Just not my personal favorite. A film of his I like a little less. Django Unchained is Tarantino's highest grossing movie to date, and received near universal acclaim as well. He announced a few years later that he was working on yet another film, this time another Western, but not a sequel to Django, although he tried to turn it into one, but it didn't feel like it would fit. The script was leaked in early 2014, which infuriated Tarantino and made him consider abandoning the project, but decided otherwise and rewrote different drafts and endings of the movie. The movie began production and was later released a year later. The Hateful Eight is Quentin Tarantino's 2015 Western epic. It follows 8 strangers who are left stranded in a blizzard in a cabin as things begin to fall apart for the hateful individuals. Tarantino's longest movie, The Hateful Eight borrows many tropes and actors from all of Tarantino's previous films. The one setting like in Reservoir Dogs, the Western setting of the previous Django Unchained, and of course the colorful cast of characters like usual. Samuel L. Jackson has his first lead role in the Tarantino film as Major Marquis Warren, aka the Bounty Hunter. A bounty hunter and Civil War veteran trying to get somewhere during a blizzard, but gets it right from Kurt Russell's Hangman and Jennifer Jason Leigh's The Prisoner. Eventually, they seek refuge in a lodge, where they meet shady characters played by Bruce Stern, Walton Goggins, Channing Tatum, and many others, as they slowly turn against each other, hurting and killing each other while trying to survive the storm for hours. Although many people thoroughly enjoy The Hateful Eight and see it as one of the great movies of the 2010s, I am not one of them. This was the final film I watched for this video, and somehow, despite its length, it's the least memorable out of all of Quentin Tarantino's films, and most forgettable. Once they enter the cabin, things go south for me. I really enjoyed the first half hour of the film before that, but very slowly this film just didn't connect or resonate with me whatsoever. The acting, lighting, and writing are fine, but aren't Tarantino's best. One flaw that stands out in this film is the setting of the cabin, basically the only one in the film. It didn't feel as bad as Reservoir Dogs, as that's Tarantino's shortest film, over an hour less than this one. But do you feel bored at times watching this? Something I rarely ever feel while watching a Tarantino movie. I would much rather have seen this film take place in a different time period, even made some time long before or after Django Unchained, as that film feels like a much better Western than this one. Overall, The Hateful Eight is just an okay movie for me, Tarantino's second weakest film for me, and why I don't have much to say overall. It does a decent job at everything it tries to accomplish, but nothing exceeds my expectations throughout its bloated runtime. I'd rather have seen some other Tarantino project than this, but it isn't a bad movie, just underwhelming. Maybe I'll enjoy this more on a rewatch, but so far, I really don't have any desire to rewatch this film, and feels like one of the most forgettable films by Tarantino. The Hateful Eight got good reviews and did well at the box office. It received award nominations for Lee's performance, the score, and the cinematography. It, like usual, received controversy for its treatment of race and women, but was far less controversial than its previous efforts and had much less of an impact than his previous films as well. This didn't slow him down though, as in 2017, it was announced that Tarantino's next film would focus on the Manson family, the cult in California in the 1960s and 70s, led by the crazed Charles Manson. The next year, the film was announced, reuniting Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt with Tarantino as the two leads of the film, and Margot Robbie playing actress Sharon Tate. Another year later in 2019, the film was almost finished. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the most recent film written, produced, and directed by Quentin Tarantino. The film takes place in Hollywood in 1969, as legendary movie star Rick Dalton, played by DiCaprio, struggles to adapt to the changing film landscape, alongside his stunt double Cliff Booth, played by Pitt, while the Tate LaBianca murders are about to happen as well. The film blends fact and fiction perfectly, having real-life figures like Sharon Tate, Roman Polanski, Bruce Lee, and the Manson family in it, while also having the fiction characters of Dalton, Booth, and Al Pacino's character fitting perfectly in as well. We once again see Tarantino's love for film, taking inspiration from movies and shows at the time and combining them to his fictitious story. The two main characters of the film are two of Tarantino's best as well. Dalton feels like a classic Hollywood star, known for his westerns, but his career is at a decline, refusing to work on a spaghetti western out in Italy, which would definitely have been a mistake. We see him struggle and slowly adapt in his life, with DiCaprio being comedic and dramatic whenever it's time to be so. But by far the most interesting character is Brad Pitt as Cliff Booth. The cool stuntman who lives in a trailer with his pitbull is able to stand on his own even when not with Dalton, and just does what he wants, but still compelling to watch either way. The mystery of whether he killed his wife or not sticks with the viewers throughout. However, even if he did it, it doesn't really matter. Cliff Booth is just cool as hell. DiCaprio and Pitt both show that even though they're middle-aged, they still appeal to audiences of all ages and can compete with actors decades younger with them. The real-life figures feel realistic as well, although most don't get the shine due to the sheer quantity of characters in the film. The most important one is Sharon Tate, played brilliantly by Margot Robbie, and reuniting her with DiCaprio after Wolf of Wall Street. Unlike some of her previous performances like in I, Tonya, Robbie is much more reserved and quiet in the film, not speaking much. Instead, we see her enjoy the simplicities in life, all of the little things she enjoys while pregnant in the gorgeous city and time she lives in, all as we expect her to be brutally murdered by the psychotic Manson family when the time comes. It's always mentioned on film Twitter and Reddit, but so many members of this new generation of actors are in the film, from Sydney Sweeney and Margaret Qualley to Oscar-nominated and Oscar winner Austin Butler and Mikey Madison. Tarantino always has had a good eye for casting no matter the decade, and it's nice to see these actors get their big break in film. One of my favorite parts of the film is definitely the ending. The Manson family waits to kill Sharon Tate and her friends at their home, but instead wound up at Rick Dalton's home after deciding to kill him in Booth, and instead get brutally murdered by the two men, with the cherry on top being Mikey Madison's Sadie being killed by a flamethrower in the pool. Tarantino's writing is still nice and fresh even in 2019, and can still compete with younger writers and directors as well, with this screenplay being one of his best by far. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a really great film and a love letter to Hollywood and people who are fans of it. A funny movie that can also be dramatic when it wants to, this film can be loved by anyone, by those who are true cinephiles or people who barely watch movies. This fun movie is always fun to rewatch and one of the best of the 2010s. Even with its controversies, especially the ones about disrespecting Bruce Lee, they don't really matter, and are some of the weakest arguments against Tarantino. I love this movie, and you probably will too. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a massive critical and commercial success in the US and around the world. It is Tarantino's second highest grossing film behind Django, and well received by everyone for its story, setting, and characters. Specifically, Brad Pitt received universal acclaim as Cliff Booth, sweeping the whole season for Best Supporting Actor and winning his first acting Oscar for it, even though it's basically a lead role. The film also introduced Tarantino to a new generation of film fans, who have gone and watched many of his previous films discussed as well. He also adapted this into a novel, his first book as an author, that dives more into the world introduced in the film. So what's next for Quentin Tarantino? Well, ever since the release of this film, Tarantino discussed his next film as his last. As he said, movie directors get worse as they age, and he doesn't want that to happen to him. So he said his 10th film would be his last, as he counted Kill Bill as one. Little progress has been made, but it was speculated his final film would be called The Movie Critic, probably about some sort of film critic. However, earlier this year, it was announced Tarantino made a deal with Netflix about a sequel to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, with him writing. Brad Pitt would star in a new adventure in that universe, reprising his role as Cliff Booth, with fellow renowned David Fincher set to direct his third Netflix film after Mank and The Killer, taking some story beats from the scrapped Movie Critic film. As of July 2025, Tarantino hasn't begun production or even finished the screenplay for his said to be final film, saying he wants to take time on his last contribution to directing movies. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. It's essentially my first one, so be sure to give your thoughts and opinions in the comments below, and subscribe and like if you want more content like this. And share this to someone who you think will like it as well. Thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time. See ya!